Right, Chair, we should be good to go if you want to make a start.
Just trying to unmute myself. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. This is a meeting of Kettering Borough Council's Monitoring and Audit Committee on Wednesday, the 25th of November. I'd like to welcome everyone to the meeting. This is, of course, a virtual meeting. All speakers will be introduced by name prior to them speaking. I will introduce each item by reading out the full title of the report. Can we take a register of those present, please? Anne?
Thank you, Chair. If councillors could indicate present when I read out the name, and also officers. Thank you. Councillor Anne Lee.
Present.
Councillor Jim Hakewill.
Present.
Councillor Jonathan West. Could you unmute, please, Councillor?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Tebbert.
Present.
Councillor Margaret Talbot.
Can you unmute, Margaret? If you hold down the space bar, you'll unmute.
Bottom left, Councillor Talbot. Well, I can confirm Councillor Talbot is here.
Yeah, present.
Thank you, Councillor.
It came up again.
Councillor Ash Davis.
Present.
Officers are Mark Dickinson, Head of Resources.
He is here, but his connection is patchy, Anne.
Yeah. Guy Holloway, Head of Corporate Cultural Services.
Yeah, present.
Shirley Plenderleith, Head of Public Services.
Present.
Joe Haynes, Finance Officer.
Present.
And Dean Mitchell, also Finance Officer.
Present.
And we also have myself, Anne Ireson, Committee Administrator, and David Pope, Committee Manager for tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. We have Graham Thomas and Hazel Webb. Have they been named? I apologise if they have. Okay.
I believe, are they speakers, Chair?
Yes. So we've got Graham Thomas, Environmental Services Manager, and Hazel Webb, Community Services Manager.
Oh, right. Yes, I can see now. Thank you, Shirley.
Okay. And we have some people here from Legacy Leisure, but okay. Right, okay. Do we have any apologies for tonight?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received apologies from Councillor Jenny Henson.
Thank you. Right. Minutes. Right, let's see. Minutes of the meeting held on the 16th of September. Can we go through them and in order to approve them as a correct record, please? And matters arising at the same time. The meetings were online. I will go through the pages. Just point out, I will make sure that I can see any hands up. I can see Councillor Davis has raised his hand. Councillor Davis, did you want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick point. I was at the meeting. I'm not listening on the minutes, probably because I was about 20 to 30 minutes late. So I was there just slightly late. So I guess the YouTube stream should confirm what time exactly I did arrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. That's noted. Okay, just seeing if anyone else. Please let me know, David, if anyone else raises their hand, because I can always see. So that was in the list of present, that's Councillor Davis. Then page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7, and that's the last page. No comments on the minutes. Then I propose that we approve the minutes as a correct record of the meeting. Do you all agree? Please raise your hand if anyone disagrees. Oh, okay, you all agree, I assume. Yes, I can tell from your smile. Sorry for the confusion. Yeah. Okay. Declarations of interest. Can I ask if any members have any declarations of interest, please? I'd have a look on the list to see. Councillor Tebbit.
Same as reported at the front of last one on 20 MA 14. We can just reproduce that, that would be fine.
Okay, which is, would you mind repeating?
Personal interest in item on the agenda in relationship to the Marlow House stroke
Thank you.
item, and a member of Kettering Huxley Rotary Club.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tebbit. Okay. I myself am a trustee of grant work. I think I declared that last time as well. Okay, thank you. Good. Okay. Right. Matters referred to the committee for a decision in relation to call-in. There are none. Responses of the executive to report to the scrutiny committees. There are none. Members of the public to speak. Yes, we do have one speaker on item A4, and I have therefore asked for item A4 on leisure services to be taken first before the accounts. My apologies to Neil Harris for that, and for people who are here for the accounts, but it would be nice for the speaker to be heard first. Could we let the speaker in? Is that
He's
Mr.
already there,
Annable?
Chair.
He's already there. Okay, Mr. Annable, welcome. You're still
He can't
connecting
hear
to
you
the
yet.
audio, I see.
He's still connected to the audio, Chair.
Yes. Okay, Mr. Annable, hello, good evening. My name is Anne Lee. Welcome to the meeting.
Good
Okay,
evening.
I believe that we start with the report. So we are now going to deal with A4, leisure contracts management. And I believe, Shirley Blenderlees, that you will present the report. And after that, Mr. Annable can speak, I believe, if that's the right order. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague Hazel, who's Community Services Manager, to present the report. And then Hazel and I are happy to answer questions. We've also got with us Francois Smith and Justin Palfrey of Legacy Leisure and Indy Man from Compass Leisure Limited. So the two companies that provide our leisure services, who also will no doubt be happy to take any questions. So I'll hand over to Hazel. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for this opportunity. As you know, I'm Hazel Webb, the Community Services Manager, and following the previous request of Monitoring and Auditing Committee, this report provides information on the current council contractual arrangements for the provision of the leisure services here in Kettering Borough. We are taking this opportunity to highlight a few key points. As outlined in 2.1, we have 2 leisure contracts covering 7 leisure facilities. Legacy Leisure managing Kettering Swimming Pool and Gym, Cornmarket Hall, Pitch and Track, Desborough Leisure Centre, with Compass Contract Services Limited managing the Arena, Lighthouse Theatre and Squash Courts. The contract values per annum are £35,000 for Legacy Leisure and £250,000 for Compass Contract Services, along with an additional £30,000 for the theatre. There are regular service delivery monitoring with both providers covering elements such as usage figures, activities, marketing and maintenance programmes. The COVID-19 restrictions have impacted the leisure sector, and the leisure facilities operated by both contractors were closed between March and July, and recently as part of the current period of lockdown, with the Lighthouse Theatre remaining closed. Both contractors offered access to a variety of online classes as outlined in section 4.1.3 of the report. For Legacy Leisure, the gym was opened initially, followed by phased pool reopening, starting with Kettering Aminter Swimming Club, followed by Legacy Leisure's swim school and bookable lane swimming for general public. We saw the return of just one of the 4 schools for their own swimming lessons. Both operators have set up appropriate COVID-19 secure measures such as one-way systems, bookable sessions, signage and new layouts for gym equipment. Appendix 1 provides customer feedback from both Parkwood Leisure and Compass Contract Services, with Appendix 3 providing details of compliments and complaints. Over recent months, an extensive refurbishment programme in the region of £360,000 has been invested into Kettering Swimming Pool, and Appendix 2 provides a summary of the improvement works. David, would you provide the slideshow, please? Because I'd like to take an opportunity to share with you a few of the pictures of the work that has been undertaken and current work in progress.
Bear with me. Come on. Let me know when you can see it full screen.
Yep, see it full screen. So I've just taken the opportunity to share a few pictures with you to give you an idea of what work's been underdone. So here we can see the new reception area. We have had new automatic doors installed with a foyer area created. We've created a new reception desk, notice boards, the seating's been recovered, and an automatic door to the pool side. And we've got glass screening around the reception desk as well as part of the COVID secure measures. David, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you very much. Within the pool area, we've got new pool lighting, new pool ladders into the pool. We've done repairs to pool tiles and installed a new balustrade. And we are also undertaking work to refurbish lockers. These are just two examples of work in progress as it is at the moment. So Kettering Amateur Swimming Club have got two designs on a set of lockers, and we ran a school competition to design new locker covers. So you can see just a brief example. So they are the 4 schools that come and use the facilities. Next slide, please. And again, this is the latest picture of the new changing room cubicles being installed to create a village style changing area. And that is literally yesterday, so it's really hot off the press. And also within the reception area, we have done a complete refurbishment of the accessible toilet off the reception. Thank you, David. That is the end of the slideshow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Can I invite Mr. Annable to speak, please, now? You are the chair of Kettering. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yes, so my name is Mike Annable and I'm chair of Kettering Amateur Swimming Club.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so thank you. Under normal circumstances, Kettering Amateur Swimming Club uses Kettering Swimming Pool for almost 15 hours per week, although that time is sometimes shared with the public. As a club, we have a very good relationship with Matt Tilley and the Legacy Leisure Pool Management team. In our opinion, they do a very good job with what they have. The pool facility is dated. It was opened in 1984 and it shows its age. Over the last few months, there has been investment in the facility as detailed within the report. We support the improvements to the changing area, something we've been advocating for quite some time. Plant upgrades will make a huge difference to the air and water quality, and these improvements will make a significant difference to user experience, and we're grateful to Council for this investment. However, we remain very concerned about the roof of the building. In 2017, part of the wooden ceiling fell into the pool during swimming lessons. Fortunately, no one was hurt. For a number of years, there's been evidence of water leaking through the roof, and the issue has been raised with pool management several times, and Council is aware. The result of the wooden panel falling into the pool was several weeks of closure with repairs, including a dressing of the ceiling. We're concerned about what is happening underneath the dressing. The roof still leaks in heavy rain. Water pours through in several places, including onto spectators and onto electrical equipment. At the 2019 Kettering School Swimming Gala, there was so much water coming through the roof that a large area of spectator seating had to be closed, and parents were not permitted to watch their children swim. The refurbished lockers look amazing, and we are grateful for the exposure the club will receive from the wrapping. The report suggests that the refurbishment provides a 20-year life expectancy on the lockers. We assume they'll be standing long after the building itself. We note the report identifies climate change implications. The new sports facilities strategy depends on swimming pool users travelling to facilities outside the borough. This will generate 43 tonnes of CO2 per year in emissions, so we're not wholly convinced by Council's commitment to climate change. Comparing the leisure facilities across the new North Northamptonshire area, it's easy to see that Kettering is the poor relation. It has the oldest building with the least facilities available, and council's solution is to expect residents to travel to neighbouring boroughs. As stated earlier, the club believes that the Legacy Leisure team are doing a good job, but it's not possible to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, and sewing sequins onto it just covers up the fundamental issues. The existing contract with Parkwood Leisure will terminate in 16 months, and this council or the next will need to decide how a new contract is implemented. This is the perfect time to consider a new design, build and manage contract to improve facilities in Kettering, improve the offer to support corporate objectives and generate income and value for council. Hinckley Borough Council is generating a £450,000 per year surplus following the 15 million build of its leisure centre, demonstrating what can be achieved with creative thinking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Annable. Please stay in case there are any questions. I have some questions for you. Do the officers wish to respond, or would anyone like to respond from the officers to what Mr. Annable has said?
I think I can respond with regard to the roof. Obviously, we've undertaken a comprehensive asset survey on much of the council's estate, and repairs and maintenance plans are based on that. Initial work has been done to assess the condition of the roof, and obviously that project will be progressed by colleagues as required.
Okay, thank you. Right, I noticed actually in our sports facility strategy dated June that there is that points were made about lack of learned teaching water in the borough. Mr. Annable, I just wanted to ask you what implications that has for the children that you teach in the pool. That's all.
Well, it's not just the children that we teach. I know that there are occasionally there are complaints at Kettering swimming pool that the water's too cold. In our opinion, it isn't. You know, if you're swimming actively, then you're generating body heat, so that we don't have an issue with that. But I can imagine that parents of infants or disabled people may find that the water is a little cold. The main implication is that with swimming lessons, the lessons provided by the swimming pool, children are being expected to learn to swim in deep or deeper water, and then that affects their confidence and their ability to learn to swim. So many leisure facilities around the country have teaching and learning pools. These are smaller pools alongside the main pool. They are generally shallower, allowing children to gain confidence and to learn to swim. And they're normally warmer, that allows infants and disabled people to feel more comfortable when they're in the pool and not as active. From a club's perspective, the main issue is that if there was a teaching and learning pool in the borough, it would free up swimming pool time in the main pool, which would then potentially allow the club to access more time at Kettering swimming pool, stop us spending money outside of the borough. And
okay, thank you, Mr. Annable. No, that's thank you very much. Thank you. That's been useful. So I have the impression that Legacy Leisure, yes, gets an endorsement. That's what I wanted to say. Sorry, Shirley, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that obviously, yeah, the issue around teaching pools and the potential for the need for that going forward has been raised in the sports facility strategy, and that's certainly something that would be likely to be considered as part of a wider sports facility strategy for the new unitary. So it's in the strategy. It certainly will be something that is on the table.
Okay, that is good to hear. Would any colleagues like to come in?
Hakel, Chair.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't look at the hands. Councillor Hakel?
I was just pondering on Mike Annabelle's point about cold water. I remember going to Bath Street, the original baths in Kettering, and that was cold water, I tell you, almost open air. I think, and one question I will ask, and officers will know, I thought we had, and as you know, this is my first meeting on monitoring and audit after all these years, at least I've got that t-shirt, that going back in time, there was a sports strategy or a swimming pool task and finish. I don't know where that went to, but
yeah, very briefly, because
sorry, we did produce at the KLV, which is now the Kettering Conference Centre, a swimming facility down there in 1993. Whilst that became unviable because of the nature of it and we never did replace any of that. And, we are in deficit, I would suggest, with those swimming facilities, having listened to some of the problems that have gone on. I would also make the point
Briefly, yes.
of coming back. Might not be very Sharon, but coming back, I'd like to mention Rothwell swimming pool, but I'll come back on that.
Okay, right. Shirley, you wanted to speak.
Yeah, if I can just clarify, yes, there was a task and finish group looking at the swimming pool, and much of the comments were fed into the sports facility strategy. So that was taken on board and fed into that.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Davis, Chair.
Yes, of course, I'd seen you. Yes, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's really good to hear that the council and the swimming club have been working together, particularly with the design competition. I really like that idea, and obviously trying to invest in the short to medium term the facilities. Obviously, it'd be good to make sure that roof issue is kept monitored and given attention. But I've always been clear, certainly at Research and Development Committee, we did start to look at future provision. Clearly, that's a decision for the new unitary council. But I think there's examples that Mr. Annable said, like Hinkley, that have merit of sort of generating revenue. So I think it needs time and consideration. But I think it should be a priority for the new unitary to look at swimming provision in Kettering, where, how much, all these things that it's not going to be a quick process. It deserves time and attention, but we've got some examples of best practice, probably some examples of not so good practice. But I've always made it clear that I'd like to see that uplift in Kettering in due course. So some good news as well on the customer feedback as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Well, thank you. Then we haven't spoken about the conference centre, I know, but we have a heavy agenda, and I know we have no particular issues in that respect, unless anyone wants to say anything. Very briefly, Councillor Hickle, because you have already spoken. Very briefly.
Yeah, but I think it's quite crucial that if Councillor Davis is confident of his position, I'd like to move that we just have a recommendation that the new unitary looks at re-provision of swimming in Kettering Borough as an urgent priority. Unless we do things like that, Chairman, there's just some words that have gone. And the second point, if Councillor Ash Davis is happy to just second that as a third recommendation, we also have just heard how much money has been spent on Kettering. I must point out that Rothwell Pool is the only other potentially public use pool within the borough, and that is suffering fairly massively. And I'd just like to put on the agenda that there are things happening at Rothwell Pool which are very similar to that which is happening at Kettering, and we should not forget that part of the borough and the hinterland around Rothwell and the swimming facilities there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hickle. Okay, I need to cut you short there. I'm really sorry, but we have a heavy agenda. So can we accept that proposal to note that this committee recommends that unitary looks at the pool facilities in Kettering?
Urgently looks at the pool facilities, not after 5 years.
Would members be agreeable to that?
If I may, Chair, I don't know. I don't think we can tie the hands of an authority. That's not in our gift to decide what the authority does. As much as we may want something to happen, that's for the members of that new authority.
Of course, we're only recommending it. We're only recommending it. Decisions are already taken about the logo and so on. I don't want to spend too long on that tonight, but it is right.
Will someone second me on that?
We'll put it in the minutes that this committee, please, that this committee has put that point forward, and we'll leave it there because we really don't want to spend too much more time on this. I'm sorry. Can I thank everyone? Can I thank Mr. Annable for speaking, and thank you everyone from Legacy Leisure and from Compass Thank you for coming. Okay, then, so can I put the recommendation at the end of A4 then to the meeting that we note? Sorry, I've closed my agenda. I'm sorry.
Chair, Councillor West, I see your hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor West. Please, yes.
You need to unmute, Councillor West.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just going to second Councillor Hakewell's proposal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor West. Well, shall we go to the vote then to add that to the proposal? Everyone in favour of adding that to the proposal? Can you put your hand up so that we can see it? So
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, Chair. It's
so
enough to carry it.
That's enough. That's carried then. Okay, that's great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Councillor West. That was very constructive.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Annabel, for speaking. Okay, we'll go to the next item on the agenda. Right, sorry. I'm so sorry. A1, external audit. Mr. Harris, Neil Harris, I can't see you at the moment, but thank you very much for your patience. And right, we're listening to your audit report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lee, and good evening, members of the Monitoring and Audit Committee. So the report you have from External Audit is our audit results report, which summarises the outcome of the external audit we've undertaken of the Council's financial statements for financial year ended 31st of March 2020, and also the work we've undertaken to look at the Council's arrangements for economy efficiency and effectiveness in its use of resources, which is our value for money conclusion. The backdrop to our work this year has obviously been influenced by the implications of the COVID-19 pandemic and the impact that has had on your officers and also us as a profession in audit as well. So members of this committee will be aware that the timetable for the publication of accounts has been moved back from originally the end of July to a proposed publication date of the end of November. And I do want to pay tribute to Mark and his finance team for the way in which they've prepared a good set of accounts, a good set of working papers, and been very cooperative and supportive to the audit process. We've had to do obviously an audit remotely this year. That's created adjustments for everybody, but I think we've had a much smoother audit than we had last year. I think for EY, I think we've substantially addressed the resource constraints that meant that we delayed the audit last year to safeguard our audit quality procedures, but nonetheless that had a significant implication for the council. And I've been at pains this year to try and bring that timetable back on track. And I am pleased to report that, subject to 2 outstanding items which are outside of the council's finance team's control, the audit is substantially concluded. And you'll note if you read the audit results report, there are very limited matters that we're drawing to your attention as well. We've performed all the audit procedures in response to our significant audit risks. We've also taken into account some of the things that have come out from the impact from COVID-19 in terms of how accounts are prepared, key judgments associated with the valuation of assets at the balance sheet date, particularly important at Kettering because of the nature of the assets that you have and the commercial strategy that the council has, that you are recognising investment properties in your financial statements, and important that those are valued appropriately. And we've involved EY Real Estates to review the valuation assumptions this year. So again, to note that there are no significant matters arising on that, I think reflects well. We've also still continued to undertake work associated with the value for money conclusion, looking at the council's financial resilience as it stood in the 1920 financial year and up to the point of the vesting date for the new unitary, and we don't have any concerns on the council's financial position or the steps it's taken to continue to make commercial investments. We did a lot of work on that last year, but we've looked at the 2 purchases again that happened in the 1920 financial year. So in summary, I think there's not a lot to draw out in terms of key findings. There are 2 unadjusted misstatements that have been reported in our audit results report, both of which are not material. I think it's important to say that one of these is certainly judgmental in nature, and that's associated with a difference in approach that's taken between how the council uses its information and historical and local knowledge to set what they believe to be an appropriate provision for business rate appeals. In EY, we use national calculations and other information to come up with what we think a calculated provision should be. And you'll note that we have identified an unadjusted judgmental difference in that area. The work of our pension, the year-end position around your pensions assets is also different to what's currently reported in the pension fund accounts, and again that's largely a judgmental difference. There is a factual difference associated with using a different area size on the valuation of a play asset by 93,000. Again, not material, but something that we need to draw to your attention. In terms of the areas that are outstanding at the date of this meeting, there are essentially two. So we require assurances from the pension fund auditor. EY do undertake the audit of the Northamptonshire Pension Fund, but as yet we don't have those assurances, and we are expecting those to be received within the next week. The reason why this is taking just that little bit longer this year is because of two things. I would say first is the triennial review of the pension scheme has taken place in the 1920 sort of financial year, and auditors are undertaking a lot more work testing membership data, and that's involved a lot more procedures than what we would normally do. And secondly, we're doing a lot of work to look at investments that support the disclosures and judgments on pensions assets. Some of those are much harder to value at the moment, and as you'd expect in light of COVID-19, some of those have a subject to a lot of market volatility as well. So we're undertaking more corroborative audit procedures to be comfortable on the valuation of the pensions assets. I know that work is substantially concluded, and I am expecting to get assurances within the next week. But I cannot issue my audit opinion until I have that. The second area is associated with disclosures that go into the council's final financial statements to do with going concern. Now, those of you that will recall the sign-off of the 18-19 audit will know that happened after the COVID-19 outbreak, and therefore it was considered an event after the reporting period that should be recognised in your accounts. So the council has already gone through an exercise once already to produce a set of disclosures that sets out its view on liquidity and viability looking 12 months from the date of the proposed audit report. But that disclosure needs to be kept up to date, and given where we are now, which is approaching towards the end of this calendar year, the council needs to make sure its disclosure reflects its circumstances at this point. And I think there are two strands to that. The first is the council's own disclosure as a sovereign council up to the vesting date of the unitary. So looking still at the council's forecast cash flows up until the end of March, also the council's budget position, how it's addressing any budget gaps and available to use reserves. And I think it's fair to say that in terms of that, I don't have any concerns associated with what the council's proposing to disclose, or whether I have any doubts or uncertainties about that. And then the second stage is something a bit more consistent across all of Northamptonshire, in that we're asking the shadow authorities at the moment and the two interim chief financial officers across the north and the west to produce a going concern disclosure and a judgment for us to review, assessing the budget, the viability and liquidity position of the two unitaries after the 1st of April, so that we can cover the whole of the going concern period, looking out 12 months from the date of the auditor's report. Obviously, some of that timing is a little bit difficult, because clearly right now everyone's in the process of disaggregating budgets, disaggregating assets and liabilities. There's a lot of work underway through the transition work streams to build up what the budgets are going to be looking like for both of the unitaries from the 21-22 financial year. But what I am aware of from speaking to the interim CFO for the North is that I am expecting a draft disclosure to come across next week to tie in with the proposed consultation on the 21-22 budget for for Northamptonshire, and that will inform the final disclosures that go into the council's accounts. Now, the reason for the consistent wording associated with that is that the council's services and the council itself will be merging into another organisation, and as part of the Financial Reporting Council's guidance for auditors, which is called Practice Note 10 and the SIPFA Code, the council is still presumed to be a going concern, even if an Act of Parliament is indicating that the council will not exist and those services will be provided by another organisation. But from an accounting perspective, we still need to ensure that there aren't any material uncertainties or risks to do with the continuity of service provision that moves across to the new unitary. And the only way in which you can assess that is looking at the forecast position around the budget and also the cash position. And if there are any significant gaps, then we need to determine how that's disclosed and whether or not that gives rise to any emphasis of matter we'd want to put in our audit report, or at worst case a material uncertainty. But the position certainly looking at Kettering's position as a sovereign council before the 31st of March is one that is very consistent with what I reached at the end of closing the 18-19 audit. So until I have both of those things in place, and certainly in terms of the going concern disclosure, there's a standard consultation process we have to go through in EY with our professional practice team to review the disclosure and the work that's been performed by the auditors, and I will be doing that exercise once, looking at the two disclosures that have been produced by the two unitaries and then overlaying it with the circumstances at each sovereign body. Our professional practice team still need to review that and reach a final judgment on what's in our audit report. So this I don't anticipate, given the conversations that I've had with individuals this week, that this is going to take weeks and weeks, but we're not going to be concluded by the 30th of November. And I think talking to Mark, it's important that a notice gets put up on your website to explain the stage that the audit is at, that it is substantially concluded subject to the resolution of these two items. And I would be content with that, and that meets the requirements of the accounts and audit regulations as well, even those amended this year because of the coronavirus and situations arising from COVID-19. I think, Chair, that's probably all I should say for now by drawing this to a close. But let me close by ending where I started, which is relative to where we were last year, and relative to what I know is happening across the local government community at the moment with external audits. I think the Kettering audit is in a very good position relative to others, and I think that reflects long-standing arrangements the council's had for the way in which it takes seriously the production of the accounts and the engagement with the audit process. And I'm pleased that we've been able to get this audit a lot more back on track than obviously the circumstances that I didn't like reporting to you last year.
Thank you very much, Neil. That's great. I don't have any questions for you. I'm just checking if anyone would like to ask a question.
Councillor Tebbit, yeah.
Councillor Tebbit, yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think to a certain extent it's been covered during the audit. I had read in the first element of the report on page 24 that we were waiting for some information through in terms of, but I believe what you're requiring now is the auditor's report rather than the IS 19 report, which you reported later on, that was received in August. So I was just a bit confused as to why you weren't able to issue it, but you had the actuarial report, but not the auditor's report. Can you just confirm that is the case?
Yeah, I think maybe our audit results report has not been very clear because it's probably at cross purposes of what we're referring to. But when we refer to the area in the unadjusted differences, we're referring to an actuarial report the council gets on its share of pensions assets, but also we're able to view the pension fund accounts and see what's in there and take a calculated view on what that difference might be. And that's what we're reporting in the audit results report. But what we don't have at the moment is the assurances that we ask from the pension fund auditor. We ask the pension fund auditor to perform a number of procedures for us, because it's easy, it's much more efficient that that's done at the pension fund. But we set out a program of work on membership data, benefits payable, and the testing of assets, and we need the pension fund team to report back on their findings in each of those areas so that I can consider any exceptions arising.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, I noticed that. Let me see if it's still.
Councillor
The hand is still up. Councillor Hickle, yes. Jim, did you want to ask something?
Yes, just understanding. I'd like to ask a question on the going concern point. And so the first question is, as I understand it, there's an 18 million deficit on the collection fund due to COVID this year. Whilst I recognise we're talking about 1920, my first question, and Chairman, several questions I want to ask. Do you want me to ask them one by one, or do you want me to rattle through them and then ask Neil or Mark for a response?
Can you maybe list them so that Neil
it might,
oh, okay, so please
it
do.
might help, Chair, if we do them one by one.
Okay,
and then
I'm
we
sorry.
Can respond straight away, if that's okay.
I'll leave it to you. Yeah.
Thank
you. So the first one is the £18 million deficit, which will have to be split next year between the two unitaries on the collection fund. How do you factor that into the going concern? How can you say conclusion?
So
I can probably help on that, Neil, if you like, in terms of the technicalities around the collection fund. I think any collection fund deficit that arises in 2021 is a result of COVID. And what's largely happened is the sums of money that would have been paid by those businesses in the retail and hospitality and leisure sector aren't due to be paid in 2021. As a result, that money goes into the general fund, which negates the deficit that will be on the collection fund. So the position that we face in 2021 is almost one that becomes cost neutral.
And going into 21 too, for the going concern estimate, how does that work then? Because they do come home then.
What will happen then, Councillor Hakewell, is the deficit at the end of the current financial year will be offset by the funding that's been made to the general fund in recognition of those businesses that aren't paying rates in the current financial year.
So there's no liability, in other words? No. Okay. If we go to, just trying to find it, value for money and risks, the page numbers are all, I think it's page 35, where you talk of we're going to determine whether a risk's value for money. Can you find that? Sorry, it's page before number 6.
I think so. Yep.
Where it says we're required to determine. Not only there, but in the beginning of the report and all the way through it is the commercialisation strategy and questions about it. And you wouldn't expect me to have joined monitoring the audit without continuing to make that particular point. So where we look there, in the middle of that page, it says, as part of the strategy, the council has invested 10.1, primary purpose, generating investment. This strategy presents challenges in terms of governance, financial and risk management, as well as partnership working. So you're highlighting a risk within the accounts we're asked to approve, but I'm not quite sure how one gauges that. I mean, I've always been frightened by the way in which that went forward. So how do you gauge that as a risk? Because you've clearly stated in a risk to the accounts you're asking us to accept.
So if I just put it into two categories, I think I think we've identified it as a risk to a council not necessarily having all the appropriate arrangements in place for economy, efficiency, effectiveness and its use of resources, and how it makes decisions and secures financial resilience, which is our value for money conclusion. Actually, the recording of the commercial transactions in terms of purchases, valuation of assets, how the council's recognising the returns it's got from its investments in terms of how they report in the financial statements, I haven't identified that as a specific risk other than involving our real estate team to review the basis of the valuations as at the balance sheet date. So I do want to say that this isn't, whilst you've been asked to approve the accounts, I'd kind of slightly separate the point. The accounts I don't believe represent a significant risk in that area. What I did focus our attention during the audit was looking at what arrangements the council had put in place in the 1920 financial year to make those decisions and go through appropriate due diligence associated with the additional acquisitions of commercial properties and investments. And the audit results report sets out the procedures that we undertook to satisfy ourselves that whilst I would entirely understand and share sometimes as a sceptical auditor, Councillor Hakewell, some of your questions and reservations about commercialisation, we always have a weather eye to that and the work that we do, and hence why I am comfortable that the council's taken an appropriate risk-based decision associated with those purchases.
Have you satisfied yourself that the Asset Management Board undertook formal training on making those decisions since 2016?
So I think this was a question that if I recall, cropped up last year as well, and I've looked at the paperwork associated with the Asset Management Board and the information that went to it, and then the decisions that the council took and the advice it got from different specialists, and I do believe that was appropriate. Now, that I wouldn't say there's a significant weakness sitting within there, otherwise I'd be considering a qualification to our value for money conclusion. And that's not to say that the council can always seek to do more in this area, because it is complicated and unusual, and ensuring everyone has appropriate briefing and training is clearly an important area. But I was satisfied with the arrangements the council put in place.
But not so much seeing any formal training.
That's Jim, you're repeating yourself now, sorry.
No, the question wasn't answered, Chairman. Was he satisfied that formal training had taken place, which was put into the council agenda in 2016, that a part of forming that board would see that training? I don't believe it has.
But it wasn't. Okay. Yeah, I mean, as I say, our audit results report was clear on where we identified the specific audit risks and what our response to that was, when our entire focus was what information did the council have before it to make a properly informed decision based on due diligence and appropriate advice. So, I don't wish to put too much of a limitation on what you've just said, but we wouldn't, unless we had a significant risk, we wouldn't have gone in and done too much digging around on training. But because I think we focus first and foremost on whether an appropriate decision's been taken.
And my last question is, when you put EY Real Estate to look at those valuations, does the cost of that go into the general audit or against the cost and disposal and income from assets purchased?
So this is part of the so this is part of the broader debate, which perhaps at the back of the audit results report, really, about the Sir Tony Redmond review that looked into the sustainability of financial reporting and external audit. And as a firm, we've been saying consistently to PSAA for a while now that the level of work we need to undertake to respond to the complexities we're seeing in local government, particularly where there's increasing commercialisation decisions and other ventures that councils are undertaking, obviously for good reasons, but nonetheless they introduce a level of audit risk that we've certainly seen an increase in the level of specialist resource that I need to be able to get the appropriate information to inform the right opinion and deliver a good quality audit at Kettering. So in terms of where this has an impact, Councillor Hakewell, is over where we think the audit fee should be. So the council has a scale fee that's set by public sector audit appointments, and we're required to inform PSAA and the council if we believe that scale fee is insufficient to deliver a high quality audit, and where we think we've undertaken work outside of the scope of the audit, then we propose a variation to that fee. We are typically proposing variations to fees for involving specialist resource, though I probably will take the words out of the officers on this one to say that the officers have a different view on that in terms of what's assumed within the scale fee, and potentially some of the scope of what auditors need to do as well under the code of practice for local government accounting. But from our perspective, we believe this is an appropriate response to an audit risk. So I think I've answered your question. I also thought there was an angle about where does this come in the terms of the accounts, but I think it is purely to do with the audit fee, and it's not to do with that being factored into the cost of the valuations the council seeks itself. I think if that's what you were driving at as well.
Well, thank you very much. We've had these probing questions answered. Thank you, Jim, for them. Can I turn to the recommendation, because I could not see any other hands up? Okay, recommendation on page 10. That the Monitoring and Audit Committee receives the audit memorandum report to those charged with governance and approve the draft management representation letter. And 3.2, that any non-material adjustments required to the draft audit opinion, the ISA 260, and the management representation letter are delegated to the Council's Head of Resources, Section 151 officer, in consultation with the Chair of Monitoring and Audit Committee. Can I put that to the vote, please? Can everyone in favour raise their hand, please? The councillors.
Yep, that's unanimous, Chair.
Hold on.
No, I didn't see
abstained.
Councillor Hickwell.
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, well, you didn't take your blue hand down from before, Councillor, so that's why I mistook.
Get rid of it. I'm abstaining from that vote. Thank you.
Okay, I understand. Okay, is that noted? Okay, I believe all the others have voted in favour. Thank you very much, Neil, for that report. Thank you, and the answers to the questions. Okay, you can stay with us, or you can leave the meeting now. It's up to you.
I will stay, but I'll mute myself and switch the video off. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, we go to item A2 now. Mark, it's Mark Dickinson, statement of accounts. I noticed that in the online agenda there only seem to be 2 pages of the accounts. I don't know why the full accounts are not online, but over to you, Mark.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Chair. We'll certainly look into the point that you raise. I guess it's made my life easier because Neil's gone first and he's already covered a lot of what I would ordinarily say. But I think it's worth mentioning that I think EY colleagues have made significant progress around the audit of the 1920 accounts. And I think it's been a lot smoother this time round than it was a year ago. So I'd just like to say thanks to Neil and his colleagues for that. I think it's also just worth putting into context what colleagues at Kettering Borough Council have undertaken as well. Because ordinarily the Chief Finance Officer would be required to sign the accounts by the 31st of May each year. As a result of COVID, the deadline was extended to the 31st of August, but we was actually in a position where we were able to sign the accounts on the 29th of June. And I think that is a significant achievement. And I think it's a credit to Dean and Joe and other finance colleagues that's been able to get us to the position that we've got. And I think Neil's covered a lot in terms of the content and his opinion, which should hopefully assist you in terms of considering the recommendations that you've got in front of you this evening. So I'm not going to cover the bits around the 2 outstanding items that are in the accounts, because I think Neil's already covered that. But if I can just go to the recommendations, and I think the first of the recommendations this evening is for members to approve the draft statement of accounts for the financial year, subject to the conclusion of the audit. And secondly, any non-material adjustments, which Neil has covered, and hopefully given you some confidence that we're only a week or 2 away from actually concluding the audit of the 1920 accounts. But the delegations will be granted to myself in consultation with the Chair of Monitoring and Audit Committee to conclude the accounts, subject to there not being any material adjustments. So if there is any questions on the accounts, I'm more than happy to take those.
Okay, let me have a look. Are there any questions? Okay, just give a Councillor Hickwell, please.
You know, I put my hand up. If other councillors have got questions, I'm very happy to stand back and let them ask them. But I spent most of the afternoon reading this, and there are questions that come forward. Just going through.
Councillor Hakewell, you might need to face the screen when you're speaking because you get very muffled.
I should attempt to by moving the keyboard then. Sorry, thank you, David. I wouldn't want my words to be missed. Just coming through into, you're right, Chairman, there are lots of items. I don't know whether it's page 113 or page 43 because I've got 2 page numbers, and it is investment properties 1.14. Don't worry, it's not quite exactly the same. In the middle of that paragraph, this is a deviation from the code. I didn't really understand what that means. It's either 113 or page 43. I think it's 113 on there.
Yes, I've got it in front of me. Yeah. 1.14.
What does the deviation mean?
Can I leave the officers to respond?
Yeah, I think I can respond to that. I think in terms of where we're saying it's deviation from the code, where revaluations are to take place at the end of the financial year. So we'd make an assessment in terms of how the market's moved. If there is significant movements in the markets, then we would look to undertake a valuation at the appropriate point. I think in terms of what it means, it's a balance sheet transaction.
So the deviation is not that we at Kettering are deviating from some national code. That's how I read it, but I might be wrong.
I think colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong. I think the code typically says that the valuations would be undertaken at the end of a financial year. What we've typically done is undertaken valuations at the start of the year. And if there are significant movements, we would then reflect those. So the balance sheet reflects that value at the balance sheet date. So whilst there is a deviation from the code, Councillor Hakewell, it is one that is permitted and one that has been acceptable by the auditors.
Understood. On page 82, Chairman, and I'm keeping an eye if people put their hand up, we have at the bottom of page 82, big 82 page number, the council has delivered efficiency savings over the past few years as shown below. We've got that, and it starts with 2010-11 in a column, 2 columns.
Yeah.
Okay, that might. Am I right to think that my perennial comment that efficiencies isn't new homes bonus, but new homes bonus and additional grants are included there under the word efficiency?
You're correct, Councillor Hakewell. When we describe efficiencies, we describe it as 2 things. It's additional income or reductions in expenditure. Yeah,
I just wanted to be sure that that wasn't broken out for new homes bonus elsewhere. Sorry, just getting to the next. Page 135, and that is notes to the financial. Coincidentally, it talks of investment properties, item 14, which I think is item 14 to the accounts. And in that column, we've got 2018, 19, 19, 20. And the third figure down talks of net gains, losses from fair value adjustments. And in 2019-20, that shows an income of 128. But am I right in saying that therefore is a loss of 128 in 18-19 and a profit 19-20? Have I got that right?
It's the other way around, Councillor. It's a gain in 18-19 and a loss in 19-20.
So what does that 120,000, 7,000 loss, how is that accounted for? Why did that happen?
It's a balance sheet transaction, and it's just reflective of the movement in the market price of the assets. So the valuers would undertake that work on our behalf. So we've got a asset valuation reflective in the balance sheet. I think it becomes the point it becomes important is if you were to dispose of an asset, because it's at that point that it becomes realised. The movement that we've got in here are unrealised gains or losses.
So no asset disposal likely to cause that. So that is presumably an asset which we intend to retain for the long term, and therefore it's just a balance sheet item.
That's correct.
Page 150 or 80 in the accounts, at the bottom, it says capital grants receipts in advance. And I noticed there that is section 106. And it may well be, Chairman, you want to point me in a different direction. But 106, for anyone who sits on planning, is money which is there to mitigate the impacts of development, which the developer has to pay. 1819, we're looking at 3.121 million of section 106 in our accounts. And that 1.21 has gone to 3.234 in the accounts we're talking of this evening. It just strikes me that if there's £3 million worth of investment, that first of all, to ask Mark, that money is in our bank, isn't it? It's not in the developer's bank. Yeah, I see Dean saying yes. So I'm not quite sure where I go with this one, but it's £3 million worth of infrastructure investment and mitigation to existing and new residents for the development going on that is simply sitting in the bank. And the risk is twofold. One is we're not spending it on things like Rothwell Leisure Centre, which I know has some. And secondly, do we have some sort of spreadsheet, I suppose, which tells us when that money will go away? Because simply all of these are time limited if they're not used.
Yeah, I think in terms of those numbers, the movement between the two years of £100,000 will be as a result of additional 106 monies coming in and the council spending some of that 106 money. So that's the net position. In terms of the monitoring, that's something that we undertake to ensure that the money is being spent within the time frame that it's allocated to be spent in.
Is that something as members we can sort of see how that works? Because clearly we don't want to lose it. If that's possible, I don't know. Is drilling down somewhere, say that the Bovis homes in Rothwell provided £130,000, it's there until 2026 or something like that?
Yeah, we can get a high level summary on that.
Thank you. And the last one, you'll be pleased to know,
yes.
151, and that is where interest of members of the council, it's in the next page, direct control. And there we see £292,500 where members of the council have had an interest in a business that's done dealings with us. Absolutely no problem with that. But where would we find that? Would it not logically, because it talks about the register of members' interests, would we be able, if we went through 36 members' interest, to add up 292,500 as transactions between members of the authority and the council?
There is a requirement for that all transactions are recorded in the register of the members' interests. I guess the bit that you can take comfort from in this, Councillor Hakewell, is that the auditors have reviewed that and they're satisfied with those disclosures that are in the accounts.
But is it a public document or a private?
It's not something that we've put in the public domain in terms of the working that sit behind those numbers.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor, for these questions. Does anyone else have any questions about the accounts? Just looking, no, it doesn't look like it. Right, can we then turn to the recommendations, point 3 on page 70, please? 3.1, that members approve the draft statement of accounts for the financial year 2019-20, subject to the conclusion of the audit. And 3.2, any non-material adjustments required to the draft statement of accounts are delegated to the council's head of resources in consultation with the chair of monitoring and audit. Can we
Move it. Move it.
Yeah. Do we all agree? Can you raise your hand when you agree, please, the councillors? That looks not Councillor West as well. That looks unanimous.
Yeah,
Am I
Councillor
right?
West.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you.
If I may, Chair, what I would also like to say is
Yes.
once we have concluded those accounts, that we will write to members of this committee advising them of that position.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for the work that your team has done on those accounts.
I'll pass the thanks on. Thanks very much, Chair.
And a safe pair of hands with you. Thank you. That's the end of a long process, or nearly. Right. Then I turn to item A3, which is air quality monitoring and electric vehicle charging points. Shirley, can you say who's presenting that report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm again going to pass over to one of my colleagues, this time to Graham Thomas, who is Environmental Services Manager. And after Graham presents the reports, we will happily take questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Chair. So the report sets out the framework and goes into detail about the requirements placed on the Council by DEFRA in relation to air quality monitoring. Members should note that the what, where, how, why, and even the format of reporting is all set out in the extensive technical guidance on local air quality management. Even the date to collect the diffusion tubes each month is set annually by DEFRA. So the 2020 annual status report covers the data collected for the calendar year 2019. So any drop in traffic related to the COVID-19 pandemic is not captured in this report. That would be in next year's report. The report itself includes the comments from DEFRA relating to the 2019 annual status report. So DEFRA's review of our 2019 annual status report was satisfactory, and they were pleased with the monitoring network we'd put into place. This remains the case with DEFRA's review of our 2020 annual status report. However, we've proactively reviewed and again increased the number of monitoring locations for 2020 to 39 to provide even better coverage. Within the borough, there is only one pollutant anywhere near the national objective level, nitrogen dioxide. The one area with the highest reading and the only location potentially in exceedance is High Street in Rothwell. This site was only commissioned in June 2019, so there is limited data, and DEFRA have agreed with our need to further monitor this location. We continue to review our monitoring network with a review of the monitoring locations having been undertaken by an external air quality consultancy, including the location submissions by members of this committee. These have been reviewed and the revised sites have been implemented. To encourage residents and visitors to assist us in our aim to improve air quality and respond to climate change concerns, the Council has installed electric vehicle charging points in our London Road, Commercial Road and School Lane car parks. In a similar vein, the County Council have consulted with residents on a number of potential on-street charging points through the VPAC project. As a result, 3 sites are due to be installed, located on Telford Way, Linnell Way and Clarence Road. We also continue our work with the County Council and partners to improve the flow of traffic and cycle lane and parking provision. These should be made even easier as we move into the unitary authority. So in summary, the Council continue to fulfill their obligations relating to air quality monitoring and management. DEFRA are satisfied with the approach that we have taken. We continue to proactively improve our monitoring and seek ways to better understand the data we collect. We are actively seeking ways to contribute to air quality and climate change improvement. Members are asked to support the work being undertaken in relation to air quality and note the installation of electric vehicle charging points.
Thank you for your report, Graham. Can I ask what the view was from Rothwell Town Council about that exceedance of the measurement, the benchmark measurements in the High Street in Rothwell? Graham? I can see that Councillor Talbot has a hand up, but I was just
yeah, we haven't heard anything from Rothwell Town Council, but again, because it was only introduced in June 2019, there's very limited data there. So what DEFRA has said is that they would want to see a full year's worth of data before we start looking at going too far.
Well, I can tell you Rothwell Town Council didn't give expressive view because they weren't informed about this. They used to get those figures, but they didn't get them this year. And I think that's a strange response to a positive, to exceeding a benchmark figure. If someone tests positive for COVID, do you say, well, we'll wait until next week to see what the result will be? No, I'm sorry, it's maybe not a fair
Chair,
comparison.
I think Shirley would like to come in there, Chair.
Certainly, yes. Who was first, David?
Shirley wants to come in.
Chair, I was just going to clarify. Obviously, I think what Graham has been explaining is it's a part result, and obviously going forward, yes, we will be talking to Rothwell Town Council, and certainly if we were looking at the data for the full year, we would definitely they would be very much part of our conversations about what's happening and what's going to happen and potentially could happen going forward. But I think in agreement with DEFRA, certainly the early indications are that this is one we definitely want to look at, and we're formulating our plans, but we will need to monitor for the full year before we have anything concrete to go on, and that certainly has been backed up by DEFRA. But obviously, if there's been an omission in sending those figures, if Rothwell Town Council used to receive them, we'll certainly address that as soon as possible.
Thank you, Shirley. Councillor Talbot, I'm so sorry for talking over you. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a question. First of all, Rothwell Town Council obviously haven't received the data, but the Town Council meeting will take place on the second Tuesday in December, and I'm sure that they will be discussing that then. I'd just like to ask about the position of the RW4. I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that it is near the mini roundabout. Well, you have 3 roads converging on the mini roundabout. There are a lot of vehicles obviously have to stop and let vehicles around the roundabout. So I'm not surprised that the number is very high there. But obviously, yes, we'll be monitoring this throughout the year. But with the high volume of traffic there and throughout High Street, with vehicles travelling up to Desborough, because they're not using the bypass. So yes, I'm surprised that, not surprised that it is high, but so the Town Council will be discussing that at the December meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I see 2 hands up. David, do you know who was first?
Councillor Hakewell made it first, Chair.
Okay, Jim?
Thank you. Just picking up and possibly some of what Councillor Talbot has already said, but in 2.13, the council has engaged their quality experts following report on the subject in 20. Is that report of February 2020 public domain? Can that be circulated to us? First question.
Chair, if I can just clarify that report in February 2020 is not in the public domain. Although it was used as background papers, so if members particularly want to see it, it is available for them to see it.
But,
I just want to add, I've circulated that to all members. Sorry, because it was sent to me. Sorry, Jim. Yes.
No, that's fine. When you come to 2.23, within the borough, only 1 pollutant and so on. What I'm confused with, Chairman, I think it's quite important that throughout the time that we were campaigning, albeit with limited success for a bypass, we were getting data from 2 points in Rothwell. One was where Councillor Talbot has mentioned it, and the other, I believe, was by the post office in Bridge Street in Rothwell. And as I read through, it says Junction Kettering and Bridge Street in Rothwell, although that's on the main road by the mini roundabout. Both areas have seen further drops, blah, 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 blah. And Bridge Street in Rothwell is, so I was of the opinion that there were 2 testing areas which we were getting, albeit on a regular basis. And now I'm not sure where they were, but if it was the one I'm thinking of, it's been there long before June 2019. So I wonder if there can be a bit of clarity there. And the other point is June 2019 is over a year ago. So we have a year's analysis.
Chair, I think Shirley wants to respond.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Graham will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what the report is actually saying is that Bridge Street monitoring tube is still there, but the emissions have shown a drop over the past couple of years. So I think previously there might have been an issue, and that's why the tube would have been put there. But obviously the figures are different now. And Councillor Hickwell, just to confirm, this report, as Graham said in the introduction, we are very much bound by what DEFRA sets out of the reporting window, if you like, and it's a calendar year. So yes, technically there will have been a year's monitoring, but this report refers to the information from January 19 to December 19. So if the tube was introduced in June 19, you've got that 7 months data. So we have to work on the calendar years which are specified by DEFRA and take it in the order that they require it. Graham, I don't know if you want to clarify anything, if I've missed anything there.
Yeah, sorry, I should have made it clear that when I say that DEFRA would like 12 months data, they meant January 2020 to December 2020. So that's the full 12 months that they would want to see. Because without wanting to get into too much of the complexities, some of the background maths and stuff that goes into this is derived on a year-by-year basis. So it becomes more difficult if you suddenly start taking 6 months of 1 year's data and 6 months of another's. They're not necessarily directly comparable on that basis. And we wouldn't get the background sums effectively until sort of around about summertime next year anyway, when DEFRA releases it. So although we might have that raw data available now for January through to June 2020, we wouldn't have the bit to actually make it real world.
Thank you for that. Councillor Davis, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to reflect on the positive uplift between 2017 and today with the number of diffusion tubes. I vaguely remember this coming to committee probably about 3 years ago, and we had sort of a short list of sites in Kettering, and I think we made it quite clear that we wanted to see that rolled out and expanded, and obviously it's good to see that taking place. Obviously to get a better picture across the borough, not just necessarily Kettering. So just obviously onwards and upwards with that, hopefully. Good to see charging points delivered and more to follow, I think, in Burton Latimer and other locations. And just one point that's come up from time to time is the London Road, Bowling Green Road junction, which was a cause of concern, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago. Do we have any progress update with the potential improvements there at all? Just to get a rough idea of perhaps when we're looking to commence that. I know there was some design work taking place, but I'm not sure how far that's progressed. Thanks, Chair.
Chair, if I can take that.
Yes, please.
I'd have to check, Chair, because obviously that would be undertaken by the Highways team of the County Council. I know the data shows that with the traffic improvements, the emission levels at that junction have improved dramatically. But I think we had then taken the decision that we would want to improve the junction anyway. So we can check that and come back to you. But obviously going forward as part of a unitary council, we will be able to take, the council itself will be able to take those decisions itself.
Thank you, Shirley. I have been in touch with, I've seen you, Jim. I've been in touch with the police as well about problems at that roundabout, people going through red lights. It's a dangerous roundabout. And I've been told that indeed they are considering maybe cutting some flows of the traffic. But it always seems to be sort of mañana, that it's always just postponed. So I share Councillor Davis' curiosity about when that roundabout will finally be optimized. So that was a good question. I would like an update on that when we can. Councillor Hayquell?
Yes, it was just a sort of final comment from the previous. Clearly, if the data needs to only get to us by the middle of next year, the question I was going to ask was, if we were in a position to say it needs an air quality management area, whatever it's called, how would we actually do that as a borough? Notwithstanding we won't do it, but how do you actually say, perhaps Rothwell is a problem, we need to declare it as an area? Does that go to an executive? How do you actually do it to say wherever, or St Mary's Road, Bowling Green Road? How do you do that? Who needs to make the decision and pursue it?
Yes, please, Shirley.
Obviously, we would agree with DEFRA that the exceedance justifies that. And then there's quite a prescribed process of what you have to undertake, including consultation, etc. I mean, ultimately, yes, in that situation, we would take a report through the executive committee. But it is done in conjunction with DEFRA in terms of what and how and whether we do it.
Okay, thank you. Right, can I then ask the Rothwell councillors whether they want to express a view on what they would like us to do now with that figure? Do we go with the recommendation to leave it until further management measurements are taken, or do we? Yes, Councillor Talbot. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that when it's been discussed at the December meeting, we can make our views known to Miss Plenderleith.
And I'll defer to Councillor Talbot because she is properly Rothwell Borough Councillor.
Yes, Chair. If Councillor Talbot would like to share the views of the council, that would be very helpful.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Shall I then go to the recommendation? By the way, the charging points, we haven't even touched on that, but it is good to see the charging points, the network of charging points expanded. I hope there will be a lot more expansion. I just wondered, there's mention of increased cycle parking in point 233. Where has that come? Because I was expecting more cycle parking, especially secure parking. So yes, Charlie?
Yeah, if I can just confirm, colleagues are working on more secure parking in the town centre. We've undertaken the consultation, and that is now going through a process to design and be installed as part of some of the refurbishment work. And obviously, we're trying to bring that forward as quickly as possible.
Oh, good. That's welcome news. Thank you. Okay. Right. Does anyone have any other questions? I'm just looking down the list. It doesn't seem to be the case. So can I then go to recommendation 7, that the committee is asked to review the information provided in this report and support the approach being undertaken. And with regards to the ongoing monitoring of air quality, and to note the work undertaken to implement electric vehicle charging points within a number of public car parks and work undertaken as part of the County Council's project, VPACH project, sorry. Try to avoid saying it. Right. Are all those in favour? Can we raise our hands? Okay.
Yeah, that'll be unanimous,
Seems
Chair.
to be unanimous. Thank you, David, for confirming. Thank you very much, Graham, for your report on that. And Shirley, thank you for those helpful answers. Right. Next item on the agenda, we have dealt with A4. Sorry, I'm just going to A5 now. Thank you. A5, project specifications for the voluntary sector grant agreements. Hazel, is that you speaking on this? I'm sorry, I'll just wait and see which officer would like to present a report. Thank you.
Apologies, Chair. I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Hazel again to introduce the report, and Hazel and I will then attempt to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Sorry for not coming to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you, Chair, for this opportunity to talk about the project specifications for voluntary sector grant agreements for 21-20 to 2023. The report sets out the proposed performance indicators for the next 2 years of the voluntary sector grant agreements following the extension agreed by the Executive Committee meeting in November 2019. As part of this extension, we are taking the opportunity to review the service specifications and agreements. We are currently consulting with provider organisations to ensure they are fit for purpose for the next 2 financial years. The funding for the funding for the next 2 years remains unchanged, and the table in Appendix 2 provides the grant amounts per annum, and any funding commitments beyond 2023 will be a decision for the North Northamptonshire Council. The format of the service specifications have been revised and the structure is set out in section 3. And apologies there is an error in the numbering and it's actually table 1. Appendix 1 shows the current key outcome and core service objectives, and in comparison, Appendix 3 provides the revised key outcomes and core service objectives. The core themes still remain. However, we've taken the opportunity to incorporate feedback and to reflect the current climate. The proposed performance indicators are shown in Appendix 4, and we have taken the opportunity to provide clarity on the key data providers need to be reporting on, linking these back through to the key outcomes. This is one area all providers have commented on previously and have asked to see this revised. The reporting timetable remains as it is and is set out in Table 2 of the report. The one difference is the move away from the 6-month appraisal to a comprehensive annual report, with each specification having a detailed reporting structure rather than a current generic one, and those are detailed in Appendix 5. Following the recent safeguarding audit, we have been keen to strengthen the requirement of all providers to have safeguarding policies and procedures or an awareness of the referral mechanisms, and this has been included as part of the additional requirements section in the agreement. The Community Services Team Leader, along with the relevant Council Lead Officer, are currently undertaking the quarterly review meetings where these proposed changes are being discussed. To date, the feedback has been positive and providers have welcomed the changes, and any amendments and comments will be considered and made following these discussions. Thank you, Chair. And as Shirley says, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Right, let me check. Any questions? No?
Councillor Davis, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like to make my usual point of congratulating the voluntary sector from what they're achieving. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I consider this a really good investment over the last few years. Lots of positive achievements, and clearly with COVID, there's been a very important role for that sector to play, and will continue to play that. So, just want to say keep up the good work, and obviously as we move to unitary, a good way forward, hopefully with many of these schemes to hopefully maintain them. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All of us who are involved in any of these organizations know how much work happens behind the scenes, how much fundraising is happening. Yes, I wish we could give more money to all of them, really, but I did ask a question, I'm sorry, outside the meeting about accommodation concern, and I was assured that accommodation concern receives funding, but is that in the table somewhere, Shirley? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, Councillor Lee, no, it's not in that table because it's not part of those grant agreements. that has been a different stream of investment that's come from directly through government money that's been sent to the council, and they have been awarded it by the council.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. Right. Well, your report was so clear that there aren't any questions. Let me go to the. It is a vital part of the support for our residents at this time. I absolutely agree on that. Right, recommendations. I'm so sorry. That's the problem of not sitting next to David, who can immediately take me to the right page. It's entirely my fault. I want to go to the recommendation. Can you point me to the right page, David?
I don't actually have the agenda open, Chair.
Okay.
241.
241, Chair.
241. I'm so sorry. My problem of my fault for keeping. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, this is what
Okay.
happens when you get 250 plus page agendas, you see.
I know. Yes. Right. Recommendation number 9 on page 241. Absolutely right. The committee notes the proposed changes to the performance indicators and annual reports and the reporting timetable for 21-22 as set out in table 2. Can I see all those in favor of this proposal, please? That seems to be unanimous. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. The voluntary sector definitely welcomes having certainty of funding, so I'm glad that that you've arranged that. Thank you. Okay. Right. Then we are on the performance indicators, the key performance indicators. So, who is that? Guy or shall I? Yes, Guy. Would you like to take us through those, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's issue 88, as you've probably seen from the cover. I was hoping to get to issue 100. I'd buy everybody a cake if we did, but I'm not sure we're going to get there. I felt it was really important, myself and colleagues felt it was really important to continue to get the booklet to you, even though we've had some challenges collecting some of the information, just really reflecting some of the pressures of COVID-19 on services. However, I think what you've got here is sort of like a set of data that gives you a flavour of how the organisation is performing, subject to a few omissions in some areas on the performance summary on pages 3 and 4. Chair, what I normally do in this situation is rather than go, as you know only too well, but for anybody who's watching, rather than go through the performance information booklet at the end of committee page by page, what I do is open up to members to ask any questions that they may have. But also I invite my colleagues to join me in answering, because the data, the information in this booklet cuts across the portfolio of council services. So it's possible there are areas that I don't know the answers. If I don't, and if my colleagues don't, then we would get back to the committee really quickly with an answer. So I'm just really happy to take any queries that members may have. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hakewill, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hakewill.
Thank you. And thank you, Guy. I'm minded to move that we can have a cake if you get to 89. Would that be right? If we can, the greatest thing would be all to meet up and eat it, wouldn't it? Safely. Just going through, and forgive me because I do only have this electronically. Page 7. Really just a comment, Chairman. There we have days lost due to sickness absence. There has to be something philosophical about, presumably, as we go to October, so many people working from home. It is clearly more efficient because people don't take the day off sick so much when they're at home, because I think that total annualized is the lowest I've ever seen. At 8, we're normally about 12 or 13. And whilst I say that with some humour, you know, there is a point there that, you know, getting up and going into an office, not feeling well or having a cold or something, and that might be something for the longer term future, that people are more comfortable, more mentally happy about working from home than, coming into work. So Guy, there isn't really an answer to that unless you can confirm. I don't think I've seen it at 8.8% over many years of being on the employment committee. I will just move on there. We then go down to page 11, and this is a bit of an Ash Davis, if I dare say, Ash, really complimenting there on the study success, the apprenticeships. Just looking along there, retention 95, 90, 84%. The fact that we do train apprentices and they do want to stay with us, I think that is really positive. Again, not so much of a question. And Guy, I'm sure you won't be able to answer this one on page 12 anyway, because the relevant colleague isn't here. But it does concern me when you look at agency staffing on page 12, 3.4 million in agency staffing. Always understand that environmental care will be the highest, but development services, I don't know what that is telling us about development services. 10% more, 13%, sorry, are agency in our development control, and that's one of the most crucial front-facing services. I don't know particularly whether that's, we don't have a percentage, do we? Expenditure, no, we don't have a percentage. Whether that percentage is going up or down with respect to the imminent demise of the council. So Guy, that's a bit garbled, I apologise to you, Chairman, but some very positive stuff there as well. I don't know if Guy, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I mean, I think there's some really interesting points raised. I think on the sickness side, I think there's two things going on. I think you're absolutely right. I think there are some productivity and well-being benefits of working from home. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag. There's research, without going into detail, there's research happening globally on what the productivity and well-being benefits are, and in some cases they're positive, in some cases they're negative. I think the positive thing is we've achieved as a council, along with other organisations, probably at least 5 years worth of sort of transformation in the way we work in about 3 weeks, which I think there's going to be some benefits to that. What I would say on the sickness side, I think the fact that sickness is low is partially a function that people are working from home and probably feel better, but also the fact that because people are more isolated, they're less likely to pick up other viruses and illnesses. And I can actually remember a time where we were on a similar level of about 8 days, and we were all very excited about it. And then there was a flu bug, and it skewed the figures sort of around about Christmas, and we were then sort of off course. Sort of moving on to the comment about the agency stuff. I know it's always a debate that's been had here at Monitoring Audit Committee about the view on agency. I think with development services, one of the challenges is it's actually really difficult to recruit planners and recruit planners who are skilled and qualified. And there has been traditionally in the past an element where we've been competing against neighbouring authorities. So I think the sort of the opportunities of the unitary authority coming around the corner, I think, will help to provide a bit more critical mass and help us to address that issue. But I think it's a moot point, and I think as officers we'd like to minimise that factor, but have to be realistic about the labour market and the supply within that market. But I think they're both very relevant points, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Very much. I know. Thank you, Jim, for that. Councillor Tebbert, I know you asked to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Could I ask you to just turn to page 4, Guy? Just look at the headings and see whether they are in fact now appropriate or whether they need to be modified slightly. The third one along from the left-hand side says February 28, 1819. I think that perhaps should be more correctly actual for 1920 would be more beneficial. The figures I know for the net additional homes provided for 1920 was 650 and affordable homes 125. And that information is actually contained in the detail of the early monitoring and audit report, but perhaps that could be reflected all the way through that section. And it would be also beneficial, I think, to be putting the targets at the two at the right-hand side, the targets for 1920, because we're reporting on 1920, and the targets for 2021. I think those probably are the targets, and it may be just the headings that we need to do. That was all.
Did you catch all that, Guy? Because my sound froze for a while. I don't know whether it did for other people as well. So I leave it to you if you want Councillor Tebbit to repeat anything.
Chair, thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I think Councillor Tebbit raises a very valid point. I think what's happened is two things have happened. One, because we've had incomplete data for the full year, we've had to remove some of the comparative data, but also I think one of the wrong columns has been hidden in the spreadsheet to fit the information on the page. What we will do is for the next Monitoring Audit Committee, we'll get this graph completely up to date with the column headers in the right place, and as Councillor Tebbit quite rightly points out, with the right comparative last year in their financial year, and with the targets comparative against the current year. So I think it's a good spot. I think what I would say is the data in the 2021 column, sorry, the current year column is the correct data, albeit you'll see that some of the planning data isn't up to date, and we're hoping to have that for the next committee for members. Yeah, good point.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, Councillor Tebbit, you'd like to come back and see.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Guy. Just a comment on the housing numbers and the number of affordable homes. The percentage that works out at is 19 to 20%, where the target is actually nearly 40%. Regrettably, the target that was set is not being achieved to a large extent because of the necessity to agree different targets with the developers to get the east of Kettering, for example, and the north of Rothwell modified to get the actual building started. Agreement to 20% has been agreed at the start. Hopefully we'll catch it up later on.
Thank you very much for pointing that out, Councillor Tebbit. I wasn't really directly aware of that, but it's very important that you pointed that out. It does give us food for thought, I'm sure. Right, it leaves us all a little quiet, I think, even Councillor Hickle. Right, I am looking at to see if anyone else would like to ask a question. Thank you very much, Guy. Sorry, someone said something.
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you, David. Guy, thank you so much for putting together these figures in difficult circumstances. I know it was a bit of a struggle this time, and thank you for doing it and giving us those figures, which are interesting. Well, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, David, please correct me if I'm mistaken, that brings us to the end of the agenda for today.
It does.
Yeah. The next meeting of this committee is in February next year, the 3rd of February next year. So we need to look at the working program, don't we? I believe we have 2 issues on the agenda at the moment. I can't see where the working program is. I'm sorry.
Well, there's no work program, Chair, because it's the final meeting. So
that's right. But there were 2 issues on there, which is the final accounts. I remember that.
Yep, and they're contained in the last minutes, Chair.
Yeah. Mark, you wanted to add something?
It won't be the final account. It'll be the work on the subsidy claim and pooling of the housing capital receipts.
Okay, thank you.
The reports that we'll need to bring back to the February meeting.
Thank you. I had seen 2 items on there. Okay. Right. Okay. So we don't really have a work program. We cannot add items to it. Is that what you're saying, David? Did anyone have proposals to add anything to it? Of course, no. Okay. Well, all that remains is then for me to wish you all a very good evening. And Councillor Hickle, yes?
Sorry, it was just in your pausing and talking about a work programme at the excuse me, at the county council. We have our last meeting, I think, in February, and part of the work programme there is to hand over to the north and west scrutiny panels what we're doing. So, you know, when it comes to the last meeting, handing the baton over to those scrutiny committees might well be the way forward, because of course we won't exist. But there was one question I just wanted to ask of Mark Dickinson. Who will close the accounts down this time next year? Because we won't exist, or will we look at them?
Well, that will clearly be a decision for the new statutory 151 officer. I would imagine how it would work would be that staff at the existing or those at the based at the sovereign councils would close those accounts down, but it'll be the responsibility of Janice Goats, the 151 officer, to sign those accounts off. And that would need to be reported through the various structures at those two unitary councils.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Mark. I also need to apologise to Councillor Hickle that I didn't welcome him at the start of the meeting as a new member of this committee, but you certainly made your mark, Councillor Hickle.
I'm relieved you left it till the end. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for attending this meeting, and thank you to the officers for their patience and for their reports. Thank you, and the work they've done.